What the fuck was that? Kraven the Hunter is now playing in theaters. I don't really know how else to start this off other than saying that. As anyone who knows, Kraven is a Spider-Man villain, and Sony Pictures is in the business of making Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man in them, but they like using his villains in these movies. Kraven the Hunter is one of these movies. There have been 3 movies from Sony Pictures this year with Spider-Man characters in them and no Spider-Man. Madam Web, Venom the Last Dance, and now Kraven the Hunter. I put all 3 of these movies in a very similar category. I couldn't tell you which one I think is probably the worst one of the bunch, because they are all genuinely just not great. Especially Madam Web. Matter of fact, I would probably say Madam Web is the worst one, but that bar is not high. Venom the Last Dance, if you saw my review on that, wasn't great. It had Eddie Brock, it had Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, it had Tom Hardy as Venom, and that was about the most charming thing in it. I guess the same kind of applies here. The most charming thing in this movie is probably Aaron Taylor Johnson. However, I would also posit that Russell Crowe probably is the best thing in this movie because he's the only one actually delivering an authentic Russian accent, whereas the main character, who predominantly in other mediums of Spider-Man has a Russian accent because the character is Russian. That's not even like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the characterization of Kraven. Now, in other mediums, he is in fact a hunter. He hunts animals for sport. He hunts people. He hunted Spider-Man. There's a very popular story called Kraven's Last Hunt in which he actually does, in fact, hunt Spider-Man, and he wins. And then he, commits suicide. But, this movie, he's hunting people, and he's got a thing for animals. There are other characters involved. He's got his brother Dimitri, who, forgive me, I don't remember who plays Dimitri in I'm just gonna look it up right now, because this movie is chock full of people where I was like, oh yeah, that person, and it's got a pretty okay, Fred Hetchinger, that's who it is. He's in Gladiator. He's in Gladiator 2. He's Carcotta. He's Emperor Carcotta, the brother to Gaeta, who is played by Joseph Quinn. And then there's also, as I mentioned, Russell Crowe. Ariana DeBose isn't too bad in this movie. Alessandro Nivola as the Rhino. Okay, look, I didn't think that it could get any worse than Paul Giamatti in a giant robotic rhinoceros suit. But dear God, this was bad. This was somehow worse than that. Matter of fact, there's one point in the movie where this version of Alexei Sytsevich makes the fucking weirdest noise when he's told some news. And he's just really not great. He's not a great villain. The only cool thing about his character is there's ties to Miles Warren, and that kind of comes back in the end too. But of the characters in this movie, I liked Aaron Taylor Johnson. I liked Ariana DeBose. Is it DeBose? Forgive me if I mispronounce her name. She was good as Calypso. I thought they were fine. But seriously, the best one and the best person in this movie is probably Russell Crowe as Nikolai Kravenov, the father, the shitty dad. And that's not even getting into the story of it, because I honestly couldn't even tell you what kind of story they were trying to tell other than, oh, Kraven hates his dad, but he has to save his brother. And that's kind of it. That's literally the story. Kraven leaves the home at 16 years old, and after a hunting match gone wrong in Ghana, Africa, where their family is hunting lions, and well, the hunt goes wrong. Kraven gets bitten by the lion and taken off, and then young Calypso saves him. And then his dad's like, "You're weak," just giving him a whole, typical shitty dad to protagonist speech of "You're terrible, you're never gonna amount to anything, blah 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 blah, you're weak, just like your bastard brother Dimitri, who in the comics is the Chameleon." Which, in this movie, look, Fred Hetchinger's fine actor. I don't think he was the right choice to play Chameleon with what they were trying to accomplish here, because there were the way they came across with the Chameleon. If you're familiar with the Chameleon character in the comics, he does this thing where he can alter his face to look like anyone, and that's why he's called the Chameleon. Well, in the movie, he just does really good voice impressions, but all it really amounts to is really shitty ADR. Yeah, it's literally just other people doing the voices, and you just see him like trying to mime the lines with his lips. It's not even good lip syncing. It's actually bad. It's really bad. But they do something with him at the end that I'm not even ready to talk about. But yeah, okay, the movie opens up in not a half bad way. Like, you see Kraven break into a gulag and he murders some fucking crime boss or whatever. I don't know. And then everything from there, it's just kind of a slow downward spiral of boredom. There are action sequences littered throughout that are fine. The blood and gore is fine. Even like some of the kills, as gnarly as they are, they're just fine. Like, I've seen some of the stuff execute, and that's the really disappointing thing. Like, J.C. Chandor directed this movie, and I've seen him do a better action movie in Triple Frontier. And I'm just like, okay, either whatever shots you used weren't used, and Sony edited this film to teeth, like to the bone, like they did the last two Sony movies with Spider-Man characters in it, or you just genuinely lazily made this movie. I don't know which one, but dear God, this was not good. It was just half-assed. It was really half-assed. And the characterization of Kraven, too, like, yeah, he's got a thing for animals this time around. He hates his dad, and it's like, well, okay, there's elements here where I see a Kraven that I'm familiar with, and then there are elements where I'm just like, okay, you purposely changed that just to try and make this character slightly more sympathetic so you could turn him into a protagonist for a movie that honestly has no business fucking existing. I wish someone at Sony would just look at the source material and try and do something more faithful with it. I mean, look, I can understand taking creative liberties and wanting to do something different, but oh my God, like the amount of just innate care for these characters and how to portray them, and just watering them down to just two-dimensional tropey action characters is just so fucking bland. It's bad. It's just bad. It's an unfortunate movie, honestly. And I know I've seen J.C. Chandor do better, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is Sony Pictures doing another Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man in it. The movie's called Kraven the Hunter. Sure. And, like, if there is really a big flaw to this movie, it honestly is the ADR. Like, there is some jarring moments where you can tell it's ADR, and it's not even woven in all that well. Like, Madam Web had some pretty bad ADR, and it's probably worse than this one. But man, this one has some not great ADR. But Jesus Christ, there's a lot not to like in this movie, and there are very few things to like in this movie. Honestly, the thing I did like was like Aaron Taylor Johnson, even though there's even some inconsistencies with like how strong he actually is. Because at one point, he like gains the speed and agility and power of like a lion and a bunch of other animals and shit. But throughout the movie, like, you see him like tear open metal doors and shit, but during a car chase he can't even rip the car door off of a car. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you show him ripping doors off left and right later on in the movie, but he can't rip a car door off mid chase sequence. What kind of sense does that make? And then to top it all off, they then follow that sequence up with him stopping a helicopter with a net. Yeah, it's not great at all. You know, the relationship between him and his brother Dimitri, you can kind of see like some semblance of, okay, they kind of gave a shit here. But that's all upended by the end of the movie because, well, the movie starts off with the Rhino character, this version of Alexei Sytsevich, and he's on this hunt with Nikolai and the two boys and their crew, and he's there and he's trying to goad Nikolai Kravinoff into like working with him, and he's so bitter about this, he hatches a scheme to like get back at him in the future, in present day in which this movie takes place. But Spoilers! Wait for it. It's actually not his plot at all. It's actually all on the dad, Nikolai Kravenov. He literally did all of this just to try and pull Kraven out of the wild. Yep, he purposely had Alexei Sitevich kill a bunch of people, then kidnap his other kid, Dmitri, only to lure Kraven out. There's another character in here called the Foreigner, who, like, he looks at you and time stops for like 3 seconds and then he's like able to move. They don't explain that at fucking all or how that's possible. It's pretty insane. But he's taken out rather quickly. And that's another... When he's taken out, he has... This is the moment where our protagonist is, like, down and beaten and whatever, because this antagonist has gotten the better of him. And he tells Alexei's goons, like, don't worry, I'll kill him. And then the goons are like, oh, okay, cool. And just walk the fuck off. It's like, you're not even just gonna watch him try and kill the guy? I mean, I know henchmen are stupid, but damn. Like, this was just not well thought out at all. And then he ends up getting an arrow to the eye. Honestly, it was more convincing than, well, another arrow to the eye in another show that I watched years ago, but that's besides the point. Anyway, all of this lazily action littered throughout film leads up to a confrontation with the Rhino, and the Rhino looks like dog shit. I think this version of the Rhino just looks terrible. It's a CGI mess. His face looks goofy. You can tell it's all CG. It's just bad. And even the fucked up part is like it's only his upper half that becomes like a rhinoceros. The bottom half just stay like human legs. And I'm just like, the fuck are we doing here? And the fight they have, hardly worth a damn. Hardly worth a damn. Amounts to nothing. And then Kraven finds out, oh, my dad was the one who set all this up. Awesome. So then he goes and fucking has a talk with his dad in the middle of a Siberian winter in Russia, and then proceeds to sick a bear on his father. That's another thing. Like, Kraven can, like, lightweight communicate with animals in this movie, and I was like, well, that's a choice, I suppose. But, you know, I just kind of rolled with it. Wasn't really expecting cinema. Wasn't really expecting much of anything, to be brutally honest. Like, the reviews are not great. Word of mouth is not great. The box office doesn't look like it's going to be great. And then the ending of the movie happens, and Dmitri, like, flips one on his brother and is like, oh yeah, now everything's mine for the taking. You abandoned me, even though what happened last year, you saved me and all, but yeah, I'm totally gonna, like, take... And, like, what they do with him, they totally turn him into Chameleon, but the thing is, like, they make it genetic, and you see, again, some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. Like, there's a point at the end of the movie, again, spoilers in case you are curious and don't want to be spoiled, but yeah, spoiler alert, like, at the end of the movie, like, he walks out of his own bar, and fucking Aaron Taylor Johnson's Kraven walks up to him, and guy turns around, and it's Aaron Taylor Johnson's face, and you're just like, oh, okay, they're finally doing the chameleon thing. And then they actually show you how he does it, and then for a split second in a single shot in a frame, you see, like, the white face of the chameleon that kind of resembles the chameleon in the comics, and you're just like, oh, dear fuck, they actually did it, and it doesn't look great. It just didn't look good. It was just bad. It was just all around bad. This wasn't a great movie. It wasn't all that terrible, but it was just bad. It just wasn't a good movie. And honestly, that's the biggest problem with a lot of these Sony, Marvel, Spider-Man-less character movies. They're just not well thought out. The scripts are bad, the characterizations are kind of off, and they're just not really well thought out. Like, they said, oh yeah, we're going to have a universe of these characters that coexist. Not one of them meet each other. It's not a universe. I don't know. I honest to God think just, allegedly they're done making these movies, and frankly, good. They kind of need to stop. This is just embarrassing at this point. This cast deserved better. Aaron Taylor Johnson deserved better. But hey, you know what? He signed on for the role. He knew what he was getting into. But overall, like, he carries this movie, does the best he can with what he can. Russell Crowe is the standout. He's great in it. I'll say that. But everyone else, and of course, Ariana DeBose, she's great too. But, like, everyone else is just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I did not like the Rhino. I thought this... when the bar is Paul Giamatti in a robotic rhino suit spitting out just generic bad guy dialogue, and you don't even do better than that, you have a fucking problem, dude. Like, that's bad. That's really bad. I don't know that we're ever going to get Rhino in live action, but if we do, fuck, the bar is not high, and it has to be better than whatever the fuck we've gotten in the last 10 years, because these last two renditions of the Rhino have just not been great. And man, if they decide to use Chameleon and Kraven again, I don't know how you do it, but do something different. Please, do something different. Like, there's easily thousands of books with these characters, and I'm just astounded that we're just seeing like mid-2000s level mediocrity of comic book filmmaking. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, this movie was entertaining at points, but was it entertaining as a whole? No, I don't think I can say that with honesty, brute honesty. Again, like, if you're a Spider-Man fan and you like Kraven the Hunter, I'm not going to tell you to check it out. I'm not going to tell you to not check it out. I will just say, form your own opinion. Like, on a technical level, it's not a bad made movie outside of the ADR. Like, technically speaking, it's well shot. Some of the action is good. It's decent. It's, you know, well crafted. But man, the movie on paper might have sounded good, but execution was just not great. Whoever made this, just, man, I feel really bad for JC Chandor and cast and crew, because I know they've done better in other projects. I will say that, like, this is probably the second best dad character Russell Crowe has done. I mean, clearly he was better as Jor-El in Man of Steel, but let's not talk about Hercules and Thor: Love and Thunder, because that's just a whole different conversation. But yeah, you know, I'd probably say like 2 out of 5? I don't know. I'm not really sure. But overall, like, it's another comic book film Sony has made in the modern age. That's about all I can really say about it. I'm not gonna just take a big fat shit over it, but I'm also not gonna, like, try and defend it either. Like, if you see this movie and you hate it, I don't blame you. If you see this movie and you defend it and love it, cool, more power to you. Overall, just, I'm not sure I'm gonna revisit this one. I think if I had to rank this in the Sony Marvel character film list, I mean, look, it probably goes Venom, Kraven. Actually, no. Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Kraven, Last Dance, Morbius, Madam Web. But it is what it is. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like the movie. Let me know if you fucking hate the movie. Doesn't matter. Like, I'm just curious. Like, please let me know what your thoughts and feelings are. If you like more of this stuff, hit that like and subscribe button. Share it. If you're, honestly, I'm not gonna say I watched this movie so you didn't have to, but it's not a bad tagline either. Like, I go and see these comic book films because, well, I grew up watching them, so it's not necessarily out of obligation. It's more of just like oh, cool, another comic book film. Whether I like it or not, that's an entirely different conversation. And clearly I just had a conversation with myself and the rest of you fine people of YouTube of whether or not I found this movie entertaining. And on the whole, again, like, no, not particularly. But if they are truly done making these movies, probably for the better. They should just focus on Spider-Man and working with Marvel Studios on Spider-Man. That's honestly, I think, the route they should go down. Finish Beyond the Spider-Verse, definitely. And, you know, hopefully Spider-Man Noir with Nick Cage is good, too, because that looks good. But we'll see. But overall, yeah, Kraven was kind of a whiff. Oh, well.